From shadows to light, my journey to rediscovering myself and protecting my unborn child. The darkness had crept in slowly, like the subtle chill of a winter breeze that you hardly notice until you're shivering. Looking back now, I can see how I lost myself in the shadows, bit by bit, piece by piece, until I became a stranger in my own life. I remember the days when my life felt expansive, like the world was within my reach, a place of boundless potential. I was a healthcare executive, respected in my field, surrounded by friends, and financially secure. My career was more than a job to me, it was a calling. I was driven by the desire to help others, to make a difference. My life was filled with laughter, with friends who gathered in my home, sharing meals, celebrating milestones, and dreaming up our next adventures. And then there was James. I met him at a party, a moment that seemed destined. He was charming, funny, and had a spark that made him stand out in the crowd. His wit was disarming, his attention to detail made me feel special, and his laughter was infectious. We bonded over shared dreams, long walks, and late-night conversations about our visions of the future. We were inseparable, and it felt right. When he proposed, it was like a fairy tale moment, just us, surrounded by nature, with promises of a future we would build together. But slowly, that fairy tale began to unravel. It started with little things. James became increasingly possessive, his protectiveness transforming into something more oppressive. At first, I dismissed it as a sign of care. Perhaps he just loved me deeply. Maybe he felt insecure. But then the small things turned into arguments. Arguments turned into control, and that control started bleeding into every aspect of my life. He questioned my clothing choices, my friendships, and soon, my career. Every innocent action on my part was met with suspicion. The way I laughed at a message from a colleague, an old friend's phone call, even an offhand compliment from a stranger, everything seemed to fuel his insecurities. One day, we went to a veterans event, a peaceful gathering I had been looking forward to. But James decided to drive by the event repeatedly, revving the engine loudly and blasting music. He found it amusing, laughing in a way that felt alien to me. The people at the event, their faces showing discomfort, reminded me of how James's behavior had become unpredictable and increasingly erratic. He would rage at imagined slights, see threats in friendly gestures, and grow distant from the man I once loved. I felt like I was living with a stranger. The hardest part wasn't the isolation, it was watching the pieces of my old life slip away. I had worked so hard to build a career I was proud of. And my social circle had been my lifeline, my support. But with every outburst, with each demand, I found myself letting go of what I cherished. One by one, my friends drifted away, unable to understand the distance I placed between us. They didn't know that every outing, every dinner, was followed by hours of accusations and questioning. I had no strength left to explain, so I slowly withdrew, hoping to avoid the fights that seemed inevitable. My step-sibling in Colorado had always been a source of support, someone I could rely on in difficult times. I remember the call I made one night, my voice shaking, filled with the weight of the years I'd spent holding everything together. They listened as I poured out my story, offering a place to stay, a chance to start over. I wasn't sure I could take it. Leaving felt impossible, like giving up on the life I had tried so hard to save. But staying was tearing me apart. Piece by piece, my health was declining. I was losing weight, struggling with sleepless nights, and feeling a dread that seemed to never end. I was now pregnant, and the thought of bringing a child into such a volatile environment terrified me. I knew I had to make a choice, not just for myself but for the life growing inside me. The decision was excruciating, and the fear of the unknown was paralyzing. But one day, I realized that the fear of staying outweighed the fear of leaving. I started making plans, setting aside small amounts of money and gathering important documents. I felt like a fugitive in my own home, moving silently, making sure James wouldn't notice. My heart pounded every time he came near the hiding spot where I kept a small bag packed with essentials. I planned my departure down to the smallest detail, coordinating with my step-sibling, who would help me once I arrived in Colorado. On the morning I left, I was filled with a mix of fear and determination. I walked out of that house, leaving behind years of memories, good and bad. As I stepped into the dawn, I felt a glimmer of hope. It was like coming up for air after drowning for years. The train ride to Colorado felt surreal, like a journey back to myself. 1 mile at a time. As I watched the scenery change outside, I felt the weight of the past start to lift. I was leaving behind a life of shadows, stepping into a new beginning. Once in Colorado, my step-sibling welcomed me with open arms, helping me rebuild my life. It wasn't easy. There were days when doubt crept in, and the reality of starting over felt overwhelming. But I knew that every challenge was a step closer to reclaiming myself, to providing a safe, loving environment for my child. I found a job, slowly reconnecting with the professional world I had once loved. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced my sense of independence and strength. With time, I rebuilt friendships, found joy in simple moments, and started to rediscover the woman I had been before. I learned to set boundaries, to recognize the warning signs of control and manipulation, and to trust my instincts. I became stronger, not just for myself but for my child. Who would one day know the story of a mother who fought for a life of dignity and peace? My journey has taught me invaluable lessons about resilience, self-worth, and the power of choice. Looking back, I realized that love should never come at the cost of your freedom or your happiness. Love, in its truest form, is supportive, respectful, and empowering. It was a painful journey, but it was also the beginning of a new chapter, one where I learned to trust myself again. To anyone trapped in a relationship where they feel unseen, controlled, or diminished, remember that you have the strength to change your story. There will be fear, there will be uncertainty, but on the other side of that fear lies freedom. Sometimes, leaving is the most loving thing you can do, not just for yourself but for the people you hope to inspire, the children you hope to protect, and the life you deserve to live. As I tell my story, I am filled with gratitude for the path I've walked, the lessons I've learned, and the resilience I have gained. Life isn't always a fairy tale, but sometimes, you can create your own ending. Unseen boundaries: a family's silent battle for respect and self-worth. In every family, there are lines, some clear, others invisible, that help define respect, boundaries, and the integrity of relationships. For years, I had believed my family was built on those values. John and I had crafted a life together that seemed indestructible, a union rooted in mutual understanding, love, and a shared vision for our future. We had welcomed 2 beautiful children into our lives, and each day felt like a celebration of the family we were building. I had believed in the strength of our foundation, but nothing could prepare me for the quiet, insidious disturbance that would come from within our own family, one that would shake that foundation and force me to confront my deepest fears about loyalty, trust, and personal boundaries. John's family was tight-knit. From the start, they had embraced me with open arms, and I had quickly found my place within their traditions and values. My father-in-law, Bill, was the silent, steady type, always there to support his children without needing to say much. Susan, my mother-in-law, was a warm, affectionate woman who doted on our kids like they were her own. Every holiday and weekend gathering was an event, filled with laughter, food, and the comforting presence of family. I looked forward to those moments, especially for my children, who were developing close bonds with their grandparents and cousins. I had always felt secure in this circle, welcomed and appreciated as part of their lives. When John's brother, Mark, returned from abroad, we were all excited. It had been years since he'd been in the country, and his absence was noticeable. I remember John talking about his younger brother with a mix of pride and exasperation. Typical of older siblings, he'd tell stories of their childhood antics and their teenage clashes, painting a picture of a relationship marked by love and rivalry in equal measure. I was excited for him to reconnect with his family, thinking that Mark's return would only bring us all closer. But things didn't go as I'd hoped. The first time we all gathered as an extended family after Mark's return, I noticed something strange. It was a subtle feeling, one I couldn't quite place. But Mark's behavior made me uncomfortable in a way that was hard to define. He seemed overly attentive, his eyes lingering a bit too long, his proximity slightly invasive. He'd stand too close, make remarks about my appearance that sounded harmless enough but felt inappropriate coming from a family member. I brushed it off initially, chalking it up to the awkwardness of reconnecting after years apart. I thought, perhaps he's just adjusting to being around family again. But with each family gathering, his actions grew bolder, and my unease grew harder to ignore. One afternoon, as I was helping Susan set the table, Mark came up behind me and commented on my outfit in a way that made my skin crawl. It was subtle enough that calling it out might seem like an overreaction. I questioned myself, wondering if I was reading too much into things. If perhaps I was being overly sensitive. After all, he hadn't done anything overtly inappropriate, and I didn't want to create tension in the family. But each time we saw them, I felt myself tensing up, mentally preparing for the next uncomfortable moment. Soon after, Mark began messaging me outside of family gatherings. The messages started innocently enough, funny pictures, short videos, things that could easily be written off as friendly communication. But even these small interactions made me uneasy. His tone was too familiar. The nature of his messages too casual for my comfort. I felt trapped, unsure of how to navigate this unspoken tension. I didn't want to ignore his messages completely, fearing it might come across as rude. But I also couldn't shake the feeling that his attention was far from brotherly. Finally, I decided to confide in John. Sitting down one evening after the kids were asleep, I told him everything. I was hesitant, worried that he might think I was overreacting. But to my relief, he took my concerns seriously. He admitted that his brother could sometimes be a bit much and reassured me that he would talk to him. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, believing that this uncomfortable chapter would soon be behind us. But things didn't improve. As the months went by, Mark's behavior only grew more intrusive. At a family barbecue, he tried to touch me inappropriately. And this time, John witnessed it. I will never forget the look of anger and betrayal on his face as he confronted Mark. The ensuing argument was heated and intense, with John demanding that Mark apologize and keep his distance from me. The conflict escalated quickly, and before I knew it, we had left the gathering, our children in tow, as the weight of family division hung heavy in the air. In the days that followed, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. I was grateful that John had stood by me, that he'd seen the behavior firsthand and taken action. But I also knew that the incident would have lasting consequences on our family relationships. I wasn't prepared for the backlash from Susan. She visited our home, and, in a tone laced with accusation, she placed the blame on me. According to her, I was the one disrupting the family harmony. She demanded that I apologize to Mark's wife, Rachel, for the trouble I had caused and suggested that I avoid family gatherings for a while. I was stunned, blindsided by her words, and felt a surge of betrayal that cut deeper than I could express. Her words left me questioning everything. I replayed every encounter, every uncomfortable moment, wondering if I had somehow overreacted, if I had done something to provoke this reaction. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. I knew that my discomfort was real, that Mark's behavior was inappropriate, and that I had every right to feel safe and respected. Yet, Susan's accusations lingered in my mind, filling me with self-doubt and guilt. She went as far as to suggest that if I told John about our conversation, it would only confirm her belief that I was enjoying the chaos I had supposedly caused. Her words left me feeling isolated, trapped in a situation where I was both the victim and, in her eyes, the villain. John and I spent countless evenings discussing how to handle the situation. I could see the toll it was taking on him, the strain of being caught between supporting me and maintaining his relationship with his family. We both knew that avoiding family gatherings indefinitely wasn't a sustainable solution. But we also couldn't ignore the impact that Mark's behavior was having on our well-being. After much deliberation, we decided to set firm boundaries. We would continue to host family events, but only at our home, where we could control the environment. Mark would not be invited until he could demonstrate genuine respect for our boundaries. Taking this stand wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, nights when I lay awake wondering if we were doing the right thing. But with each gathering, I felt a renewed sense of strength. We were creating a safe space for our family, a place where we could reconnect with loved ones without compromising our well-being. Over time, these smaller, controlled gatherings helped to rebuild some of the fractured relationships. And gradually, the tension eased. Through this journey, I learned valuable lessons about self-worth, boundaries, and the importance of standing up for myself. I realized that protecting one's dignity is not just a matter of self-respect. It's a vital part of preserving the integrity of relationships. By setting boundaries and being unafraid to enforce them, we not only protect ourselves but also show others how we expect to be treated. This experience taught me that while family bonds are precious, they should never come at the cost of one's self-respect or sense of safety. In the end, this journey wasn't just about confronting inappropriate behavior, it was about rediscovering my voice and affirming my right to feel safe and respected. I learned that it's possible to stand up for oneself with grace and resilience, even in the face of familial expectations and pressures. And perhaps most importantly, I realized that true family support is rooted in mutual respect and understanding. The unexpected journey of becoming a parent to my siblings, finding strength in chaos. The story I'm about to share isn't just about becoming a parent to my siblings when I least expected it, it's about finding strength, resilience, and compassion in the face of chaos. It's a story of unexpected burdens and the slow discovery of what family really means when everything is stripped down to the core. I had to step up when our mother, who was always the one responsible, left us with nothing more than a vague promise to return. It was supposed to be 1 week, but days turned into weeks, then into months. And suddenly I wasn't just the older sibling. I was the one cooking, cleaning, managing schedules, and trying to provide the love and stability my younger siblings needed. At first, I thought I could manage. I was 19, technically an adult, but this was beyond anything I prepared for. I was just trying to figure out my own life. Yet here I was, thrust into a role I hadn't chosen. I had 5 younger siblings, each with their own unique needs, personalities, and reactions to the abandonment we were all feeling. My brother, who was 22, came back to help, though only on the condition that our mother wouldn't return. It's funny to think that his return gave me a sliver of hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough to push through the long nights and early mornings. Our days became a series of small battles. My 16-year-old sister became the main challenge. Every day felt like a war of wills. She resisted every attempt I made to bring order, rolling her eyes and sighing at any request I gave. Sometimes, she would do things just to get under my skin, stirring up chaos with the younger ones, encouraging them to misbehave, then standing back to watch the turmoil. And as if that weren't enough, I found out she had been messaging our mother, begging her to come back, only to receive cold responses or outright rejection. That moment broke my heart. I realized she wasn't just being difficult, she was hurting, abandoned, and dealing with emotions far bigger than any teenager should have to bear. One day, she was recording our 7-year-old sister's meltdown, laughing as she captured her little sister's pain. When I took the phone away, I saw messages from our mother that made me realize just how deep the wounds went. My sister had poured her heart out, asking for love, for acknowledgement, for some sign that our mother cared. But our mother's replies were indifferent, even cruel, leaving my sister with the crushing weight of rejection. Understanding this helped me see that her defiance wasn't simply rebellion, it was a cry for help. A way to express the hurt she couldn't fully articulate. In the midst of managing these complex emotions, I also had an older sister who wanted to help, but only ended up adding to the stress. She would call to discuss our childhood trauma, unable to let go of the past, which only drained me further. I needed solutions, not more emotional baggage, but I understood she was hurting too. Unfortunately, her calls became another weight to carry, making me feel like I was being dragged backward when all I wanted was to move forward, to give my siblings a chance at a better life. With so many challenges piling up, my brother suggested we move to Western Australia to start fresh, away from the memories and the constant fear of our parents showing up. It felt like a light at the end of the tunnel, a place where we could begin again, away from the burdens of our past. Financially, we were managing, thanks to his budgeting skills and the kinship support, which allowed us to occasionally give the kids small gifts and introduce them to healthier meals. Seeing their faces light up over a small toy or a meal they hadn't had to share with 5 others was worth every bit of effort. And yet, despite everything, the 7-year-old would go outside, looking down the road for any sign of our mom, hoping she would return, and it was heartbreaking. The 9-year-old tried to protect us, reprimanding her younger siblings if they misbehaved, as if she feared we'd leave too if things got too difficult. It was strange and touching to see this little one trying to hold us together, to keep us from falling apart, even as I tried to reassure her that I wasn't going anywhere. I knew she carried the scars of our mother's abandonment. I wish she could simply be a child, unburdened by the need to protect anyone. In time, I learned that each of my siblings had found their own way to cope with the loss. The 9-year-old found stability in routines and thrived with structure. She started trying new foods, even enjoying my brother's pasta dishes. The 7-year-old was another story. Fixated on the comfort of routines like her vanilla custard, which was her go-to request for every meal. Each day was a balancing act, providing what they needed while gently guiding them toward a healthier, more balanced life. One of the hardest parts of this journey was accepting that, despite my best efforts, I couldn't fix everything. All I could do was be there, offering a listening ear, a reassuring hug, and a stable presence. The hope was that they'd understand I wasn't leaving them, no matter how tough things got. I began reading up on parenting techniques, finding ways to introduce structure and security, all while managing my own feelings of frustration, exhaustion, and occasionally even resentment. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. As we prepared to move, my brother and I started saving, planning, and preparing the kids for the transition. The idea of a new life brought hope. Yet the daily challenges kept us grounded in the reality of the present. Our oldest sister, despite her own struggles, finally decided to visit, and while I was apprehensive, I held out hope that she would be a positive influence on the kids. Setting clear boundaries with her, I explained that we needed support, not drama. Surprisingly, she respected that, focusing on helping instead of dredging up old wounds. Looking back, I can't say I would have chosen this path, but each challenge has taught me resilience and patience, qualities I hadn't known I possessed. My siblings didn't ask for this life, and neither did I, but together, we're learning to navigate the chaos, to find joy in the small victories, and to keep moving forward. I hope that someday, they'll look back on this time and remember not the struggles but the love and commitment that held us together. Family isn't just about blood, it's about the people who show up day after day, even when it's hard. It's about creating a safe space for each other and finding strength in the face of pain. If this journey has taught me anything, it's that love is often messy, exhausting, and complicated, but it's also what makes us whole.